Welcome back to the channel. This is the Action Figure Grader playing a little bit of catch up on some auction house sales data since I was out of town last week. And one of the auctions that ended was over at Heritage Auctions. I believe it ended like July 22nd, 21st, somewhere in there. That was right when I was gone. But there were some nice mint on cards, some play sets, a lot of die casts that sold in this auction. And for the most part, there were some really good deals in this particular auction, and none of them were super crazy, but even on some of the high grade stuff with low population on the population report from AFA, some of them went for really good deals. So let's take a look. We've got a 21 back die-cast X-Wing. This was DCA 75 plus. So again, this is a more collector friendly type of item, not the super high grade stuff. This one sold for $412.50 after the buyer's premium. That's before sales tax and before shipping costs. But I found that Heritage has very reasonable shipping costs, and then your sales tax is just going to vary depending on which state you reside. But in general, I feel like they do a really good job of making the shipping costs to be pretty affordable. $412.50 on that one. They had the 21 back Darth Vader's TIE Fighter. This was a DCA 75, and it was also a clear blister punched example, no price sticker. That one also sold for $412.50, so probably the same buyer on both of those. This was the die-cast Imperial Cruiser. It was only a DCA 60, but it was minted in sealed box. Nah, I take it back. It is, yeah, it is. Yeah, DCA 60. I saw the blue and I thought that was qualified, but no, this is a factory sealed Imperial Cruiser. The DCA label is blue, but box 60, window 80, vehicle 90. So just a 60 on the box brought it all the way down. Presents pretty well. It's just you can see the heavy creasing in the lower left hand and upper left hand corner on the back of the box, which is what brought the score down. $262.50 is a pretty good deal though for a low grade sealed die cast Imperial Cruiser. They had a DCA 80 plus for the Cloud Car die cast twin pod Cloud Car. It shows as being a clear blister, and looking at it, it looks like a clear blister to me. You could maybe make an argument. I don't know. To me, that looks pretty clear. I don't see anything on there that looks like it's starting to yellow at all. That one's pretty nice. That's a pretty nice. Usually the die-cast twin pod Cloud Car that blister does yellow quite often. That one sold for $656.25. That's the number I'd pay in a heartbeat. I thought that was a very good deal for a very high grade example. 80, 85 were the subscores. They had two different die-cast snow speeders. Both of them were DCA 75 plus. And you can see the first one here, 75 plus, punched example. A little bit of sticker residue on the card. $537.50. And then this one also sold that was the same grade. You could maybe make an argument that the card was a little cleaner on this one. It didn't have any kind of sticker residue. Although it looked like maybe in the upper right, it looks like it's got a little bit of a litho tear. Very small. But overall, it probably presents a little bit better. The blister, it's a little iffy looking. It's got some weird stuff going on to the right of the stem. And then on the left-hand side, you can see where it's maybe starting to peel off the card just a little bit, which is always a concern, right? We talk about that all the time on the channel, that these die-cast vehicles are really heavy and they can pop off the card completely. But that one did sell for a little bit more at $612.50. But again, they were both the same grade, but this one had what appeared to be some sticker residue in the upper right-hand corner. This one's definitely starting to yellow a little bit, though. So, yeah, that's probably the main reason why this one sold for less, is because the blister looks a little more iffy, a little more like that it's starting to yellow. So, pretty good deal on both, though. On to some mint on card action figures. We had a 21 back B Luke X-Wing, graded AFA 80 plus. It was a punched example with a self-service price sticker. Nice. That one sold for $906.25. That's a good deal. Good deal for a beautiful clear blister there. Again, this is not perfect, right? This one's not perfect, but I think given that it's a fairly high grade for 906, that feels like a fair deal to me. They also had a number of different secret Star Wars action figure offer 21 back ESB cards. So these are the transition ESB cards, so only the first 21 figures appeared on these ESB cards. They did have some pretty ugly price stickers, which I think probably kept the price down a little bit, but the Death Squad Commander sold for $687.50. The R2-D2 was probably the biggest surprise. This one was an AFA 85, and it doesn't look like it has the population report information on there, but that's a very high grade, and this one was one of the few that did not have any price sticker on it. It was punched, but it's an AFA 85. 80, 85, 85 were the subscores. And it sold for $843.75, which to me feels like a very good deal. It must be that the R2 is pretty easy to find on the 21 bag. I don't know exactly which characters are the hardest to find, other than I know the Stormtrooper's tough to find. But to me, that feels like a really good deal for an AFA 85. We had a C-3PO. This one was an AFA 80. This one's fairly easy to find. You see this one pretty often on eBay. Maybe not in this grade, but you do see the 21 back C-3PO a lot. $625 on that one, which is interesting, right? That the R2 sold for $843. I feel like the R2 probably should have been more, but admittedly, I'm not an expert on the 21 backs. I just don't, it's just not a line that I collected, but the C-3PO at $625 is kind of right in line with other data points we've seen. The 21 back Luke Farm Boy was only an AFA 75, so they did keep the price down a little bit, but $600? I mean, that feels like a good deal there. It did have that Mervin's price sticker, which does detract from the aesthetics of it, but it is a clear blister punched example. $600, so I mean, that to me feels like an ungraded example price overall. The Stormtrooper was a 32 back A clear blister, unpunched, no price sticker, AFA 75 plus for $400. That's a good deal. That's a really good deal as well. The AT-AT driver on the 41 back E, it's not the debut card, which I think is the 41A survival kit, but this is the offerless 41E AFA 80 plus with a Toys R Us price sticker, unpunched. That one sold for $718.75. Probably about right. I don't think that was a steal or an overpay by any means. That's kind of like right in line. We had an Ugnaught on the 47 bag that was starting to yellow. So, that's something you got to keep in mind for a lot of the heritage auctions, that they maybe don't share that information in the descriptions. Let's see if subgrades, delivers high grade appeal, blah, blah, blah. It does not say that it's yellowed. But if you look at the front of the card, you can see very clearly that it's starting to yellow there. I mean, that's definitely yellowing. So that's one thing I do like about Hakes, is that they often, they always say that in the auction description that it's yellowed since grading. And I think Heritage should do the same thing. It's a little, it's partially maybe they don't know, but I think nowadays it's kind of inexcusable to not mention it. It's on the buyer. At the end of the day, it's always on the buyer, right? You got to do your homework. You got to zoom in on the photos. But I feel like as an auction house dealing with these high-end collectibles, I think it's, I just think it's the right thing to do, to at least put it in the auction description saying blister has yellowed since grading, the way Hakes does. So anyway, it still sold for $387.50, which is probably fair market value anyway. But I just wish that they would maybe take a little bit of initiative to better describe the items. 48C TIE Fighter palette. This is one that's fairly easy to find, but it is an expensive one. This one did sell for $843.75, AFA 80 plus. That's right in line with market expectations, and that's about where I sold mine. I think mine was a CAS 80 unpunched, and I think I sold it for right around the same price point. $843.75. This Forlom was a great deal. AFA 80 sold for $362.50. I don't know why that one sold so cheap. Looking at the blister, it looks still clear to me. I don't see any signs of yellowing to the blister. It was unpunched or partially unpunched. It did have the ugly Toys R Us price sticker, but it's an AFA 80. This is the poor man's debut card for those of you that watch the channel regularly, but $362.50, that's like, a good solid $200 to $300 less than where I would have expected this to sell for at a minimum. So that was a really good deal. The Zuckus was an AFA 80 Plus that also went for cheap, $387.50. So some very good deals in this auction. The Luke, no surprise there. This Luke Jedi was a clear blister. And it also had a clear inner tray, which is very tough to find. And you can see the grade on that. 65C, 80, 85, 85. And, you know, again, it's just tough to find any Luke Jedi on a U.S. Kenner card that is not already yellowed. And this one is a beauty, and it sold for a big, big number. It was unpunched, no price sticker, $1437.50. Now, if this was a yellowed example, this probably goes for what, like $350 to $400? So essentially someone is paying, you know, 2.5 times, or at least 2 times what, 2.5 times what a yellow blister goes for. And rightly so, right? It's just nearly impossible to find any Luke Jedi on a U.S. Kenner card that is still clear blister. So beautiful example there. Next up, we've got a Kenner Canada Emperor AFA yellowed 75 plus. They all turn yellow, but it's a Kenner Canada, and it sold for $139 with the buyer's premium. That's $90 before the buyer's premium. What a steal for an AFA 75 plus Kenner Canada, unpunched, no price sticker. I don't know if maybe people noticed a crack in the blister or what, but, you know, looking at it, it looks like it's still factory sealed. I don't see any crack to the blister on it, but maybe I'm just wrong on that. But maybe it looks like there's a crack going on the left-hand side by the Emperor's leg, but it's not mentioned in the auction description, but maybe that's what's going on. I have no idea, but that is a pretty good deal if it's not cracked. If it's not cracked, then that's a good deal. Yeah, again, no mention of any crack to the blister, so what do I know? But that one sold for a good deal if it's truly not cracked. Here was a Monomon. It was labeled yellowed blister, but that's as close to a clear blister as I've ever seen. I mean, that is a beautiful example. It was only a 75 plus, which did keep the price down, but it still sold for $625, as it probably should have. That's a very, very nice, clean example of the power of the Force. A Monomon 75 plus grade. Chewbacca AFA 75 plus yellow blister for $437.50. Another very good deal. Darth Vader AFA yellowed 80, but just light yellowing to the blister for $718. A very fair deal on that one. That's one that seems to be coming down in price. If you've followed my recent price guides, that does seem to be dropping in price a lot. On to some play sets and things like that. We had a Darth Vader Star Destroyer qualified 75 plus that sold for $1031. We saw another example on eBay that was around that same price point, maybe even slightly higher than that on eBay in an auction. So $1031.25 on that. We had the Imperial Cruiser that was factory sealed, AFA 75, Empire Strikes Back packaging. Beautiful box art on that. That one sold for $1031.25. AFA 85, only 4 graded higher. This is the Collector's Series dewback, and that one is another one that seems to be dropping in price, even in high grade. These used to be like $900, $950. Now this one sold for $718.75. So again, not terribly hard to find this, even in high grade, but it used to be like a $900 plus type of item in an 85 grade. So $718.75 on that. The TIE Interceptor was factory sealed, AFA 80. That's a beautiful item there and did sell for a pretty penny, although you can make an argument that that number's pretty low relative to some others we've seen sell. And there's something going on the box on the left-hand side, which probably explains things, but it got the AFA 80, but it's got a tear in the box on the left-hand side. So I don't know what happened there. No idea what happened there. Is it truly an AFA 80? Probably not. Probably not. This is another one where, you know, they didn't really share anything about that, but it's very clearly got some structural flaws going on that would preclude this from really being an 80 grade. And let's check out the description. Yeah, I mean, they got nothing in here about that. I mean, it's just crazy to me that they just sneak this type of stuff through in their auctions. I mean, that's totally not an AFA 80 based on what is happening on the left-hand side of the box. So crazy stuff, but that's what happens. There were some Star Wars plushes, a lot of 3 that sold for $450. Rancor AFA 80 that sold for $625. Some Ewoks and Droids figures. Kez-Iban sold for $234. That was an AFA 75. Good deal on that. So anyway, lots of really interesting and, wide range of prices, but in general, these price points were very affordable at or below fair market value. So I hope that you found this information helpful. Thank you as always for watching. Don't forget to leave me a like, and I'll be back soon.